Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez, RH Gutierrez, MD, and I am going to be talking about water-soluble vitamins. To help me, I'm going to use the back of a generic multivitamin. So you'll see me going to that to go the list. Now, the other thing I'm going to be doing is I do need to mention again how science actually is supposed to work. Does it always work this way? No, there's actually sometimes when people manage to go around it. One of the important things is, as a science instructor, I do not just say what I believe. It doesn't matter what I believe, it's only what the evidence suggests. As a biology instructor, evidence is more important. So what that means is, let's say I'm talking about physical fitness. I can only show you what the evidence shows. The other thing I want to talk about before I get into vitamins, the water-soluble vitamins, it's pretty much B complexes and the C vitamins, is life expectancy. Now, a lot of times people will tell you, well, we should be eating this way because that's the way we've always been eating. And one thing you have to actually look at when you see things like that or hear things like that is look at the average life expectancy in humans throughout the history. Now, this is just average. Now, when you're doing this, again, you have to use evidence. You can't say, well, the Bible says this. You have to have real evidence that shows how long people were living. What we find through records and various studies, anthropology, can end up finding this is for most of human history, life expectancy was about 35 years. Now think about that. 35 years. I'm 42 years old. I would have been dead 7 years in most civilizations. Now, there are people who live longer, but you have to remember, there's a lot of reasons why people died. Most of it was because of childhood diseases. A lot of it were injuries. You get a bacteria. You get Clostridium, for instance. You end up having massive bacteria that kills people. When we discovered penicillin, we ended up seeing life expectancies come up. So germ theory, as education goes on, we end up increasing our life expectancy. Now, today, the average life expectancy is about 80 years. Depending on where you live, and I'm using U.S. numbers, 80 years, women are living a little longer. But that's one of the big things that we actually want to look at is, well, people are living longer, and the main reason is hygiene, diet, and the ending of a lot of childhood diseases. If you think about it, if you live in the U.S., you probably don't know many people who have died from diarrheal diseases. You probably don't know anyone unless you're older than me, you probably don't know anyone who's had polio, measles, mumps. All these things are things that we don't see anymore. And so the thing that ends up happening is people are living longer because of that. But diet and infrastructure is also a big thing. Without the right diets, we starve. Without getting the right vitamins, things break apart quicker. And so, yes, diet is very important for health. Now, the interesting thing that you can actually find is, like I said, the blue zones. The blue zones tend to be areas where people are living longer, healthier, happier lives than anywhere else. And the main one, for those of you who are martial artists like me, will know that it's Okinawa. A funny thing about Okinawa is we actually have for instance, my lineage. I've noticed that my teachers right now are in their mid-70s. My late teacher reached 80. They actually say he passed away really young, but his father had apparently heart problems and passed away at 50, so he outlived his father. His teacher reached 97. His teacher's teachers reached 97. And so what we're talking about is a time period when up to 1800s, and a time period when most people weren't living past 40. In Okinawa, you had people who were living past 100. Maybe not past 100, but near 100. And so these blue zones, if we actually look at them, we can see that there's something else going on besides just the science that we have. They probably were eating, well, not probably, but they were eating diets that tend to have all the things you need, all the things that are required for life. And so with that, I'm going to start with the vitamins. So the first vitamin I'm going to talk about is going to be called vitamin C. You've probably heard, you use it for immune system, but it's actually used for everything. Vitamin C is a main vitamin used to make collagen, which is found everywhere. It's a protein that holds your body together. It also acts as an antioxidant, which means if you're doing stuff that ends up releasing negative charges that can damage your membrane or your DNA, vitamin C can neutralize this. So vitamin C is one of these very important amino acids if you want to maintain good bones. People don't think about it. If you want to maintain your skin proper, people don't think about it. You need vitamin E. And this vitamin, like I said, it's used for everything. Now, a lot of times people will talk, well, where do you get vitamin C? Main big source everyone already knows is citruses, but you can find it a lot in kiwi fruits, and it's usually found in vegetation. We know that if you don't have enough vitamin C, your gums start to fall out, you start having excess bleeding, you have bruisings, and your body starts falling apart if you don't have enough of this, is the end of it. Now, even though vitamins are micronutrients, you only need small amounts of them, we have found that there is no real side effect in having too much vitamin C. The only thing that would happen is you'll pee your vitamin C out. Now, the other vitamins, there are some that have some toxicity, and for that reason, I'm going to actually have you tell you a little bit about it. Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is vitamin B1, which is called thiamine. Now, thiamine is present at almost everything. I mean, almost every grain you eat will be fortified with vitamins. It's enriched breads and pastas and rice, tortillas. Anything that says enriched has vitamin B1, which is thiamine. It is used in the brain a lot. It's used in making memories, maintaining normal nerve function, and it is used in metabolism as well. So again, it's going to affect every cell in your body, especially your nerves. Again, this is one vitamin that if we have too much of, we don't see a problem with, because it's a water-soluble vitamin which can be relatively easily removed from the urine. If we don't have enough of it, then we start getting problems. Usually we see the deficiencies, not getting enough, in alcoholic. Alcohol does tend to decrease the level of thiamine. Also, if you have a low caloric diet, if you don't have this, a lot of times you can tell what's going to happen. You're going to have mental confusion, muscle weaknesses, weight. Your body's going to waste. You're actually going to end up swelling in a lot of places. And if you're growing, you're going to have a problem with this. 2 is called riboflavin. Now, riboflavin helps, again, release energy from foods. It promotes good vision. It actually does help good vision. It helps the skin. It helps convert amino acid tryptophan so you can make it into niacin. So if you have enough B2, you can actually get away with not having another vitamin. But the sources of riboflavins tends to be liver, eggs, and the dark green vegetables, and actually some bean type stuff too. But we do put a lot of this in our diet. Only problem with riboflavin is ultraviolet light seems to destroy riboflavin. Have a decrease in, relatively rare in the Western world. It is really closely tied together with energy and energy usage. So it's actually one of the big things. If we go into biochemistry, I can actually tell you all those different things where riboflavin is actually used, and niacin as well. But one of the things that we find is that if you don't have enough riboflavin, you actually start having riboflavin, the deficiency usually ends up causing symptoms that you'll actually be able to, you can see actually cracks in the corners of the mouth. You can have dermatitis, which is the skin is going to actually be really itchy, especially in the nose and lips area. You're going to have light sensitivity. A lot of times you can get cataracts, and you can have a sore red tongue. Those are actually the deficiencies of it. Now, again, it's a water-soluble vitamin. We don't really know what happens if you take too much of it. We haven't found anything that suggests that you can end up getting a toxicity from it. Niacin. Niacin is B3, also called nicotinic acid, and it's involved, again, in energy production, and all the enzymes in your body need it to function properly. In digestion, it's important, and promoting your appetite is important, and healthy skin and nerves. Pretty much anytime you have energy, it's going to affect all your cells. Now, most sources of niacin are going to be fish, liver, chicken, meats. You can get peanuts, and again, we enrich every grain with it, so you're not going to have a problem with it. If you don't have enough of it, you have a disease called pellagra, which the disease occurs as a result of having low levels of niacin. And the symptoms are usually cramps, nausea, you have confusion again, and skin irritations. Now, this is one of the few water-soluble vitamins you can get toxicity from. If you take too much, you can end up getting flushed skin, you can have rashes, it can end up damaging your liver. But usually it's not a problem if it's obtained with food sources. It's usually a problem if you're taking mega doses. And sometimes, I will tell you that sometimes niacin is used to drop cholesterol. It's used as a medication. And in that case, you will have one of the side effects of flushing. And again, it can cause liver problems. And so, but what they found is if you're taking those niacin in those doses, you should. They say that taking a baby aspirin helps. Now, as I say that, I actually want you guys to realize that if you're taking niacin for health and you haven't been told to take an aspirin, you may want to talk to your doctor because there may be another reason why he's telling you not to. It may be that you're already getting an aspirin through another thing, or it may be that the medication you're taking niacin with already has the aspirin. Now, one of the things with B6 is it is important in most metabolic functions in the body. It's also used to make red blood cells. Now, as we talk about red blood cells and we talk about these things, we start noticing how important it really is. One of the big things is, where do you get it again? Again, it's the same place you get most of your vitamin Bs. Uh, Pretty much some sort of pork, sort of meats, grains, again, put as much vitamins in those as we can. You can get them from beans. You can get them from green leafy vegetables. In it is found in breast milk. So a lot of times when they're giving people prenatal and postnatal vitamins, they'll actually add a little bit more of the B6. The deficiencies are all skin and dermatitis mostly. You can't have anemia, which is low levels of blood, and that makes sense because you're using B6 to make blood. You can end up having kidney stones with too little of it, and a lot of times people get a little nauseous if they have this. Again, there is also some mental confusion, which, as it's one of the vitamins that's involved in metabolism, which I'll do a quick lecture on that probably next time. It's one of those that will end up having problems with that. Now there is again a overconsumption problem, but that overconsumption problem is relatively rare, and it would cause some sort of nerve problems. So with that, we move to folic acid. Food sources again are liver, kidneys, dark leafy vegetables, meats, fish, whole grains, fortified grains, beans. You can get it from citric fruits, so it is one of the vitamins that you can get almost anywhere. What we do find is overconsumption of folic acid, really not much. It can, if you have a B12 deficiency, it can hide that, but too much really seems to not to be a problem. It is used a lot of times when you're on certain chemo medications. They will actually get you to drop the level of folic acid because they're trying to pretty much cause the tumor cells not to grow as much. If anyone's interested, we could talk about that later. Overall, the only problem with having too much of it is it'll mask B12 deficiency. If you do have a deficiency in B12, you're going to have anemia, you can have diarrhea. If a woman is pregnant, it can end up leading to some birth defects. So it is a vitamin that's okay. It's pretty good to take, and you guys may be interested in taking more. It is as it helps in cell division. Some people say it does involve help in wound healing, but I haven't read anything specifically that talks about that. One of the vitamins that's really fun to talk about is cobalamin, which is B12. Now, B12 is different than most because it really is only found in animal products. Uh, Pretty much it can only be found in meats and liver, and pretty much meats and kidneys and fish and eggs, milk and milk products, oysters, shellfish, everything that is just animal. People talk about vegans, oh, they can't get enough protein, and the truth is that's not true. But B12 is one of the things that anyone who's a pure vegan may have a problem. B12 deficiency is really not that common, but it would be most common in places where they're strict vegetarians. Sometimes children of vegan mothers, elderly who aren't eating properly, they can end up having the defect. Usually these include anemia, and it's a special type of anemia, changing the size of the cell of the red blood cell. You can end up getting, you're going to be tired. This is a vitamin that helps maintain function and make red blood cells. Neurological disorders, anything that affects metabolism will give you neurological disorders, degeneration of nerves, tingling. So one of the things is B12 is one of those that's really important to take. Now, when you take B12, your stomach makes a special protein called intrinsic factor. An intrinsic factor will bind to B12 and protect it from being broken down in the stomach acids, and then bind to a special receptor in the intestines, which helps bring the B12 in. We don't have a disease caused by too much B12, so if you take too much, again, you just pee it out, have the healthiest urine in the world, and that's pretty much it. Now, there are some people who get surgery in the stomach and end up destroying the cells that produce the intrinsic factor. And when that happens, they can also get B12 deficiency. And so a lot of times these are the people who really need B12 injections. The next one I'm going to talk about is biotin. Biotin pretty much helps release energy from carbohydrates and uh, fats and proteins from food. It just takes everything and helps break it apart. Uh, Pretty much the source of it is in anything. I mean, you can find it in meats, you can find it in eggs, you can find it in milk, you can find it in most fresh vegetables, in yeast and breads. Biotin is made by intestinal flora, so in your own intestines can actually make you the vitamin you need. So usually it's not a problem getting biotin, but if you do for some reason end up having a deficiency in biotin, what you do end up having is pretty much fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, depression. Some people get depressed from this, by the way, I should mention. You will have muscle pains, heart problems, and anemia. Remember, this is actually something that's going to be helping break down. Take what you eat, it helps break it down so you can use it for energy and even absorb it. So without this, a lot of it is going to be appetite problems, fatigue, nausea, like I said. Next one I'm going to talk about is pantothenic acid. Pantothenic acid is another one that's pretty much found in, it's really hard to have a defect in because it's made by your intestinal flora. It is again used in making, taking carbohydrates and protein and breaking them down from energy, but it's also used to make certain hormones. Pantothenic acid is needed to make hormones. Now, if you have too much pantothenic acid, it really, if I remember correctly, there's really not much of a side effect. There are some people who have gotten diarrhea or water retention, but that's about it. And it's you're talking about massive, massive amounts. Deficiencies are usually only seen in places where people are starving, so you don't really see much of the pantothenic acid deficiencies. I honestly can't remember what the figure of if it as it makes hormones and metabolism again, it's going to cause you to become a little tired, but it's rare because it's found everywhere. Hopefully you enjoy this video. Any questions that we can get to, I will.